Hey guys, so the Worlds patch is finally about to drop. A lot of these changes are based on pro play, remember, because obviously they're going to be playing on Worlds, but they're going to affect our games as well, especially with a few of them. It's actually quite a big patch. Now, I've teamed up with Harris Poll, by the way, for this video to get you some free RP. We've done a few of these before because with the league and our queue times and champ select times, you can legit just do them while you're waiting. It's a website where you do surveys for research companies, you give your opinion, you improve their products, and in return, they give you some RP or other gift cards. There's a link down below, so go and check it out. Thank you to them for sponsoring this video. But because you guys are so good with sponsors, they've given us an extra $25 of RP to give away on this video. So leave a comment, like the video if you do, to enter for that card as well. So let's get into the changes for 7.18, starting with the biggest ones for our solo queue gamers. But actually first, the most random change. I mean, the best display of quality riot balancing. Elise's E cooldown is going to be up late game at rank 5. And you know why I'm confused? Maybe it's because do you ever really use this twice in a team fight later into the game? Maybe it's because what does an extra 4 seconds do really anyway? But actually no, it's because you max this last, so you won't feel the nerf until level 18 either way. Way beyond when Elise is going to be useful in the game. It's so weird. Elise is an early snowball champion. You pick her to win the first 20 minutes of the game. What is nerfing her level 18 really going to do? Anyway, first up is Tristana. So it's come to me banning her every game just so I get a break from playing against her. To be honest, it's not really about how good she is late game. It's like how she can do so much damage early, and like a hyper carry you can't really bully, you can't really shut down early, is pretty hard to play against, to be honest. So basically less damage in the lane phase for all-in fights. Those are the aims of the nerfs. These both target the same thing really. Like late game this will do barely anything, but in lane it is going to help playing against her. You've probably lost close to about 75 to 100 damage off your kill combo, I think, which is like 10% of an AD carry's health bar or something like that, at least early into the game. The idea is now that we can actually give her a good smacking in the lane phase and stop her getting her items as fast as she is at the moment. You've got to think though, if it happens, then Jinx and Twitch will naturally get better in comparison. Like Twitch we know about, obviously, has been around for ages. Jinx flies under the radar more, but all three of those do the same job. Now with Calista, her ultimate cooldown is going up at early rank, so it's harder to get kills in the lane phase. This change, this might mess up the Tristana ones a bit more. I don't know if Calista needed a nerf for our games, but for pro play, I can kind of see why, I guess. So in my head, I'm thinking like Calista is probably the best AD at shutting down hyper carry picks, and her ultimate is a free engage, so that's partly why. Having 30 more seconds on it early game is going to mean it's easier to survive against her and just play to outscale, if that makes sense. It's going to be harder to snowball with Calista, but it opens up the meta a lot more for weak laners, to be honest. Zaya's not really a weak laner, but in comparison to Calista kind of is. Vayne, though, are pretty even and might actually be better now. Champions like Twitch tend to outscale, and that'll be easier to play versus Calista as well. So for Cassiopeia, we have the base damage down on her Twin Fangs, her E. It's now going to be 10 to 90 from 15 to 115. The AP ratio is up 10%, but it's going to be a lot less damage over a fight over the mid game as well. You're not going to be as powerful in these mid game fights. This is probably going to be the most direct nerf this patch. Like rank 5, you lose 25 damage per Fang. That is massive. I don't know what it is about this champion recently, but whenever I see them in my games, I either see really good ones that just take over or they're completely boosted. Like I really don't get it. Cass is deceptively strong early though. This is one of the things. Those Fangs legit really hurt, especially if you get tagged with the Q first. So yes, like she's amazing late game, but she definitely has the potential to sink those Fangs in early. Well, she used to. I'm not sure about that now. Like I think you must need at least like 8 Fangs to kill somebody in a fight. That's going to be 200 less damage than it was before. To put it in a very simple way, every 3 times you would use this, now you're going to have to use it 4 to do the same damage. That's pretty harsh. This I think is a proper indirect buff though to mid lane champions like Lucian, Corki, LeBlanc, who notoriously get dumpstered early by her. Speaking of which, Lucian is finally getting a change. It's been such a long time. That change is actually a nerf. No joke. The cooldown is going to be up rank 1. It's more risky to dive in and trade early. It's easier to shut down and it's easier to gank him. He is one of Korea's favorite mid laners right now if you didn't know, and that is why he's getting a nerf. To make it more punishing to dash in and trade, harder to spank in the lane phase, and actually easier to shut down as a jungler. It's insane that Lucian is a pretty awful AD carry at the moment, but he legit gets a nerf. It's unreal. More than anything, he is actually used as a Kassadin Corki counter, so if you play either of those, you've got to be happy seeing this. The final big change, I think, is something really underrated. So a buff to the Spell Thief support line. You're going to get some more cooldown reduction, and it's actually a good buff. This was actually borderline overpowered before people realized coin could get you sensor so much faster. Now we have sensor nerfs last patch, we have these buffs now, so I think we can actually see a bit of a shift, like back to punishing rather than just resident sleeper lanes. We're looking more than anything at Bard, maybe Brand, Morgana, Sona maybe, Karma, Nami as well. Like obviously they want sensor, but they can actually do a lot of damage early. People have forgotten how much damage a support can do in lane because everyone builds defensively with the coin now. Like, I reckon this might shake it up a bit. So in terms of AD carry, like, these are the only AD changes. So we have the ones to Calista giving her less kill potential and nerfing Tristana's early game damage. What it means really is Twitch will probably go back up to the supreme AD choice, I think, after Trist is knocked down a little bit, and Vayne and Zaya move up as well with both of these changes. These two really, for me, are very strong at the moment, even though they aren't really talked about too often. I guess Zaya is, but Vayne's kind of like under the radar. Actually, nah, she's played a lot as well. We might see more Jinx so creeping in, who definitely is underrated, but Tristana and Calista will still be decent at what they do. So jungle has a lot of smaller changes though. The first one, not really a small change actually, to Knight's Vow. It's 100 gold cheaper but 100 less health. One of the most used items on tanks at the moment. Cinderhulk into Knight's Vow every game for a lot of picks. Now remember, by the way, in 7.15 the HP was already lowered by 50, so this is another 100 now. I guess it still does the same job with the passive, but not as good for the jungler anymore when you buy this with the Cinderhulk as well. Remember, Cinderhulk is 20% more bonus health, so it's actually more than 100 you will lose overall after you've taken into account the extra 20%. I think I've used the word underrated so many times in this video, but Ivern definitely belongs into that kind of category. Everyone thinks he is trash, but actually he really isn't anymore. He's held a top 5 win rate in Korean solo queue all of this patch, and this patch was 3 weeks, so that is actually pretty impressive. This meta is about protect the AD. It's not really about a tank meta actually, so who does that better than Ivern really? What we're seeing more than anything is a tank and kind of kill support like Thresh or Rakan kind of, or Blitzcrank, and then Sensor Redemption being built on the Ivern instead. That way, if you mix it correctly, I guess, you have a Locket and Knight's Vow from the support and Redemption Sensor from the Ivern. That is legit insane. Like an AD carry's wet dream to play with. The AD carry is going to get 4 items to help buff him and his damage in team fights or keep him alive. That's actually amazing to play with. The next one is kind of expected really though. One of the most popular junglers now finally getting a nerf, but remember, this is basically just undoing the buffs they gave him a little while ago. Right now, I don't really feel like it's going to change much. Like, you don't really pick him for his shield power, like it's his raw damage, but ability to engage, gank, and team fight. Like, he's such a well-rounded choice. Losing a potential 5% health on Jarvan will actually hurt in team fights, but how many times have you thought to yourself, wow, this W shield really meant I took no damage? That is so broken. Yeah, I didn't really think so. It only really applies to late game anyway. It will have an effect, but it's unlikely to cost you many games. Nidalee's buff is kind of a lot like Ivern really, where Nidalee in the right hand is pretty strong again as a carry jungler. I think it's Peanut from SKT who runs Athene's Nidalee at the moment. It gives you loads of AP now after the changes, but it's also a really good heal. It might not impact lower tiered games because she's actually a very high skill cap champion, but it's more a gentle reminder that Nidalee is actually still in the game. She's still a champion and she's still a beast. I did tell you there are loads of little changes, but the next one is to Gragas. Maybe one of the bigger ones actually. We have to see how it plays out in game, but apparently there was a kind of bug that made Gragas' belly massive at the end of his body spam. And it meant that dodging that at the end was really hard. It would hit when it probably shouldn't. So this is actually aimed at fixing that. Bug fixes in League are weird because honestly they can go one of 2 ways. Like no effect at all, or they kill a champion because secretly it was giving them a lot more power than it should have. Now finally, Lee Sin mains are going to be happy. Everyone else is going to be sad. What massive buffs we have this patch. They're giving him an extra 20 on his shield. I'm not sure this is going to change much. I saw Gripex actually being pretty salty on Twitter about them, so I'm going to take a guess and say this is exactly what he wanted to see. It's insane to me that Lee Sin though can remain the #1 most paid jungler when unless you get ahead you really do not offer much at all. It's pretty crazy. Honestly, it's pretty useless if he doesn't get ahead. So putting all those together, Gragas might be rest in peace, probably not, but we'll see about this bug fix impact. It might be big, it might not. Nidalee and Ivern are very underrated as picks, actually very solid for this meta, and both just got gentle reminders that they are still good. Jarvan for solo queue is still really good if you build damage, but if you build Cinderhulk and Knight's Vow, then you're actually getting 3 nerfs in this one patch. In general, Knight's Vow is still good. This still does really well to protect your AD carry, but you won't get as many stats out of it personally, so remember that is bigger for junglers. In terms of the meta, tanks will still dominate, but there is more room for other choices to come back as far as damage goes. The main ones I would think would be Rek'Sai, Nidalee, Jarvan, and Shyvana. If you really want to carry, those will be good picks anyway. Ivern is a lot better than people realize, so we will see more of him, I think. Jungle is more of a supportive role at the moment, so like I know a lot of people hate that, but we're not likely to see a massive shift unless AD carry mid or the top lane meta changes. Speaking of the mid lane, apart from the Cassio and Lucio change, that was the wrong game, Lucian changes, which are the biggest, we've got 2 more. What I mean by Band-Aid is both of these champions are scheduled for reworks as well, so they're just kind of like patching them so that you can play them if you want to, but they won't be massive. The thing is, this Azir buff is actually really good, but because it's Azir, it probably is not going to make much difference. Like giving him an extra 150 damage on his ultimate is really big. It's the same with Ryze, like his AP ratio going up up 40% is really cool, but his W isn't really his main damage source. With Cassio and Lucian less lane dominant though, it makes passive mages a bit easier to play, which will be good, and also a big buff to Kassadin. He should be a lot better again. Those two were really like ones that hammered him early, but now he can scale a bit easier. It's not just the matchup, but people will not play them as much because they got nerfed, so it just gives you an easier time anyway. Corki will most likely be played a lot more if people stay away from Lucian as much, and the roam style though seems to be like the most effective for now. Talon, Twisted Fate, Katarina especially feel this more than others, and they seem kind of like easy free win champions. For the top lane, there are only a few changes, but one important one to Fiora. There's a new effect on her ultimate which gains bonus move speed when near the target. This could actually make playing against her so difficult if she's running around like a madman. Now in theory, she should actually be decent in this meta, right? It seems like they're going to keep buffing her until she is as well, which is good news for Fiora players. It might not have a massive deal because it is only movement speed. I just did the quotation marks with my fingers. You can't see that obviously, but it's only movement speed, but it actually could be really big because Fiora has enough damage in her kit anyway. There are two other changes, which are for pro play more than anything else really. Nara's base health is down, and there are a few quality of life buffs for Nautilus's Q, mainly just reducing the mana. There are no real changes here to the meta unless this Fiora buff is actually that big, and it does change a lot. If it is, then we're going to see her beating a lot more champions like Yasuo and Jax and Camille, stuff like that she does normally do well against. The thing is, Fiora is a popular champion, so what we'll also see more of is like Darius, Pantheon, and Jace, who normally do pretty well against her, coming back up to beat her. So I hope you enjoyed the video today. Thank you for watching. Remember to check out Harris' poll in the link down below, and as always, I'll leave you with the robots.